Hi, it's Nancy with the Scroll in the Garden. I got to see my new great grandbaby yesterday, and his sweet little mama, our granddaughter, just wrapped her arms around me and said I need a hug because he didn't get to go home right away. Actually, he's still in the hospital, but hopefully everything will be all right. It's just going to take him a little while to get breathing regularly on his own. So it just, sometimes I felt so worthless, you know, like there's nothing I could do. And I know we all feel that way sometime. It sure makes you see how vulnerable we can be, though, because this little granddaughter I'm talking about has been the Rock of Gibraltar for her dad, her brothers and sisters, her nieces and nephews, her siblings, of course, and she's just a wonderful girl, and I wish her luck and well and blessings of the Lord in her life. And I know that nothing we do out of love is totally worthless. It all means something somewhere along the line. I've been feeling pretty worthless in the garden. It's like the summer heat and it's just scorching everything, and I think, why am I keeping on trying? And I know this little picture I've got right here is not an example of that, because this verbena is really enjoying the day. That there are lots of things that are just desperately needing cooler weather. When it was actually a little bit cooler yesterday morning, that's one reason I decided let's go on to the city where I can see my grandbaby, my great grandbaby. And it was a good thing we did. It was getting back to its regular heat by the time we got home, and everything was needing watering, but I just did the hand watering, and everything else was damp enough that it made it through fine. So I'm really glad I went and got my little container to my friend, and she gave me a little doll that she had given her mother and painted it for her, and she repainted it again for me and told me they wanted me to have it for my garden as remember a token to remember them by. And so naturally I don't need a token to remember them by, and it looked so beautiful where she had it that I really hated to take it, but at the same time I'm so grateful that they wanted to give it to me, and it is beautiful, and I'll be showing you that once I find a spot for it. I want to get it where it'll be protected some in case we should have a hailstorm or something. Hopefully it wouldn't get destroyed. I'm going to walk right out here and get this picture of this gazania too that I was telling you about the other day. The colors of it, it's white with some pink in the center. Isn't that pretty? It's probably my favorite, even though I love the bright yellow with that little reddish maroon center too, but this white one just really seems to set it off. This is, of course, one of the pots that just needs cooler weather. It's struggling and looking quite scraggly, but I'm still believing that if I can keep it holding on until that fall weather comes, that it's going to just really be a little show off for us. My husband was out here counting the caterpillars on the deal this morning. Let's see if I can get some of them for you. You can tell this poor little deal, they've got it down to the nub, and just the stalk practically is all that's left. Which is not a problem for me. I actually grow it probably specifically for the caterpillars, but also it's just a real pretty plant in the garden. I would grow it even if it didn't have if it wasn't a caterpillar house plant. But I love to see these big old pretty caterpillars on here because I know that they'll end up turning into butterflies, and I love to see the butterflies in the garden. I got a couple of more hibiscus plants from Logie's that came in. They were put on back order, so they just came in, which I kind of hate that they came in this heat, but that may be fine. They may do well. This heat won't last too awfully much longer, hopefully. I mean, I say that, and we're at the end of July, and August could just be the undoing of me and the garden. I hope that's not the way it is, but even in July I felt some of that, so we'll just kind of have to see how it goes. But this is one of those hibiscus plants that came in, and they're already a good size. That one is. This one's not quite so big, but hopefully I can learn to keep them through the winter. I've certainly been trying because they're just so beautiful. Of course, they make the hardy hibiscus too, and I do have some of it, which is better for me because I do terrible with house plants. But I just love the annuals too. They're just so bright and beautiful, and to me Logie's has some of the prettiest hibiscus, most unique colors. And I'm seeing that over here this Esperanza has bloomed for me. Isn't that a pretty bright yellow bloom on that? Look, here's another sign of fall coming. These peppers, and I believe these are the ones that my mother gave me a start of, and they will turn both purple and red at different times. I was disappointed that I didn't see any of my purple splash peppers that came up, and I planted, I don't even know how many. I planted a lot of them, and so far I have not seen one of them that came up. They're so beautiful. That's another thing I would love to get started in the garden. And I think I do maybe have one of the black pearls growing in my seed box, but I'll basically have to wait until it makes a little pepper, and they just really do make little round black peppers that look like pearls growing on it. They're very pretty too. I can't help that this purple splash is still my absolute favorite. It just has the most beautiful colors of purple, white, and just a dark kind of, I don't even think it's green, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful color, and it trails down. It's just a perfect container plant. But I didn't get any of them as far as I know. There may be some out here that I haven't seen yet, and perhaps they'll still get big, and I will get to see them in the garden, but I'm not foreseeing that to be the case. And these are some of the pretty Mexican flame vine already blooming, and they usually draw the butterflies in. Hope this little plant will bloom so I can get it on here and show you, because it's so beautiful. It literally has a bloom that looks like a little cluster of blue butterflies flying. It's so pretty. You just have to see it to believe it. So hopefully it did not bloom for me last year, but I was able to keep it through the winter. I'm always excited when I can do that because I'm not a houseplant person at all. But if I can save it, that always is good for me, because look how much it's grown. Just since there's its little root down there, and it's already grown up to be probably a little over 3 foot tall. That one has it. There's more over on the other side that's not as tall, but hopefully it will bloom. And the little plants, most usually they just don't seem to mind the heat if you'll just keep them watered good. But that's hard to do for a human being, to be out in this heat and be able to just keep on doing that, because it's just so stressful, and so it just makes you practically ill. But and then you're just wiped out for the rest of the day. But like this little angel right here, she's just enjoying it as much as the plants are. It doesn't bother her a bit. Don't you wish we could be like that sometimes? Look at this beautiful little bright red salvia blooming here. But don't make the mistake I did. I thought, oh, how pretty that's going to be. And so I took the seed, which it's prolifically anyway, but I sprinkled them all over the garden. And I honestly had to spend 3 days one year pulling this up, because it was totally taking over, and everything around it was dying out because it was just taking over. I can't handle a plant to do that. That's when it's got to go. But I have let it creep back in by not destroying all of it. But at least I'm not sprinkling it everywhere, so it'll be coming up everywhere. Hi, it's Nancy with A Scroll in the Garden. Welcome back to A Scroll in the Garden, Worthless, Part 2. There's a small row of pots behind this front row of pots that I had sedum in, and they look like this window box pot right here, and the sedum looked like that too, but the snails have gotten to it this year, and there's very little of anything left in the pots there now. So at one point I want to get all of those out of there and refill them with clippings from the sedum. They root easily, but I need to do it, in time for them to put their roots down, so that hopefully they'll just come back. They normally do just come back from the year before and have no problem with them, even in those shallow pots. But this last year we ended up having a late freeze twice. So they just didn't make it. It kind of knocked them down the first time, and the second time it just practically took them out. And then, because some of them were dead in the pot, the snails found them and just really did a number on them and on my hostas this year, and some of my impatiens. So you can probably tell that I'm kind of taking all my pictures in the front where there's a bit of shade, so I can stay in the shade. The little plants that are in the shade seem a lot happier too than the plants out in the sun. That sun is just horrific for them, even though of course they all need the sun, but this heat is just about more than any of us can take. Little pot, when it gets a little cooler, I want to redo it just a bit. I think it's pretty, but it needs to be evened out a bit. I'll need to clip some of the periwinkle off and maybe see if it'll restart down toward the bottom. And then there's of course this one area I've tried to put stuff there, but it's just been too hot to get it started. But I do want to get something started in that bare spot, and then I think this is going to just be a very pretty container garden. And then right out in the heat, the big middle of it is this little pot. And look at these Bidens or Bidens, however they're pronounced. Aren't they pretty this morning? And this is a lovely little pot with sedum. I love this little turtle. I don't know why I'm drawn to turtles, but I am. I think they're cute. But sedum and rose moss are so wonderful for a little pot where nothing else would probably grow. They not only grow, they just do wonderfully. Look so good. And I've told you my husband and his twin brother made this little container, wooden container holder for me, and it has just a little pot in it, which I have sedum in here too. It's not going good yet, but it will. I really believe that it will. It doesn't get a lot of water, but the sedum doesn't really need a lot of water. Once it gets going and fills out, I think it'll be really pretty and really full. And this is the little pot right here that had gotten heavy because of the sprinkler filling it with water, and it just got heavy and fell off. It's been there for several years though. It hung on really well, and I actually had to get my husband to help me put that back on because it's just so hard to hold it and get it tied around there by myself, which I try not to ask him to do too awfully much in the garden for me because you know, all this was not his idea. But he's been fine with me doing it, and I have been trying to take care of it so it doesn't fall back on him. And I'm just really actually proud of it. I love it. I believe the Lord is in me doing this, and I want to keep doing it. But like I said, there are times when I just feel worthless with it, and like the whole job I'm doing is just a worthless job. But I do believe differently than that. It's just the heat and just the struggle sometimes gets to me, but that's true in life no matter what you're doing. Look at this vine. I think this is a pipe vine, and I think the reason I put it there is because it is a host to the giant swallowtail. I know it's a butterfly host plant, and I believe that's the one. So I hope that one will live too. I'm not sure if it's hardy in our area, but maybe I can get clippings and save them through the winter. It's sure looking pretty this morning. This may be another example of salvia gone amok. It's just really growing prolifically right there. I probably should pull that up before it goes any more to seed than it already is, because it will just totally take over. Oh my, look at this. Here's a weed growing right in here. They just get somewhere where they try to hide. Oh, there we go. There's that weed. Can you see it? I can get it in there. But anyway, it's out of there now, thank goodness. But this is what I came over here to show you, is this little plant right here, and it is a clematis. It's a bush clematis, and it's little, but it's cute, and it's always a welcome sight to see it in bloom. It looks like this little hardy hibiscus Texas star enjoyed the cooler weather enough yesterday, which we didn't have very long of a cooler weather, but yesterday morning was nice. It was overcast. There was a gentle breeze blowing, and I think it made this one decide to put on another bloom. Get a picture of Benjamin's little bird he painted for me. I love it. So I'm in the back now, and I'm melting. I've just got, sweat. My hair is stuck to my neck, and it's just terrible. But the little plants seem to be doing fine right at the moment. As long as they can get water, they seem to handle this weather all right. In this little pot the other day, I discovered there is a little bird's nest right here, and I thought, well, it must be all spent and used up, so I'll take it out of there. And I took part of it out until I realized there's one little egg in there. So I put the cover back on it and left it. It's just a pretty little reddish brown, maybe a little bit of a speckled look to it in there. And here is an example of a little plant that's feeling the heat like I do. It just, you know, it's scorched it, it's dried up in spots, it looks terrible. This is one of the little datura. It has a little cluster of purple blooms that I've never seen in real, but I hope to this year. I hope it still will bloom for me, but it may have needed, well, probably definitely needed to have more shade than it got right out here in the sun, although it does get some shade, but it's just been too hot for it here. This is another example of something I want to use again. I want to use the rose moss in these little pots, like these top pots. I thought the sedum was wonderful in it, and it is, but actually the rose moss was more prolific, and it bloomed and gave the color, and I think I like it better. And I like the idea of that little spike sticking up the top of it. And then I wish all of my calabachoas would do like this one right here is doing. So pretty. And look at this little bunch of seedlings that's coming up here. These are my late zinnia seedlings. There are some other plants there too, but mostly the zinnias. But we'll see how big they'll get this year. I hope they just spring on up there and just really show you what they can do, because there are some beautiful zinnias. I wish this little common buckeye would open its wings for you, and you would see there's nothing common about it. It's so pretty. When I take a still shot of this little butterfly, those little the little rounds in the pattern of the butterfly just are iridescent. So beautiful. Something else I noticed recently is that this little surprise or magic lily has fragrance. When I walk out the gate right here beside it, that scent just comes right to me, and it smells wonderful. This is some of the pretty little double cosmos right here. These are some of the things my brother painted for me.